You are not at the beginning of a financial shift. You are not even in the middle of one. You are at the point where most of the movement has already happened, and that is precisely why this moment feels strange, quiet, or undefined. 88% of the shift is complete. Momentum is already in motion. The field has already responded. What remains is not effort, learning, or correction. What remains is stabilization. This is the phase where many people misinterpret the signal. They assume that because things are not accelerating, something is missing. They assume that because the external world is not shouting confirmation, they must push harder. In truth, the opposite is happening. When a timeline is nearly locked in, the field reduces noise. It becomes subtle. It waits for identity to match what has already been set in motion. The final 12% is not achieved by action. It is achieved by familiarity. It is achieved when your nervous system no longer treats the incoming reality as unusual, exciting, or threatening. At this stage, forcing does not help because forcing implies doubt. Strategy does not help because strategy implies uncertainty. Seeking does not help because seeking implies absence. The field responds to what you are being, not what you are attempting. Almost there is not a delay. It is the most powerful and unstable point of creation. It is unstable only because identity often lags behind momentum. Energy moves faster than self-concept. The field can open a door long before the mind feels ready to walk through it. When identity resists, the system shakes. When identity relaxes, the timeline locks. This is why this moment matters. Not because you need to do something, but because you need to stop interfering with what is already forming. Stabilization happens through recognition. Recognition that nothing is wrong. Recognition that the quiet is intentional. Recognition that you are not waiting for money, and money is not testing you. You are simply allowing your internal state to become congruent with what has already been initiated. This video is not here to motivate you. It is not here to give you techniques. It functions as a stabilizing field. As you listen, your system is invited to slow down, normalize, and settle into coherence. Not by convincing yourself, but by letting the body and awareness register that this phase is safe. Completion does not require tension. Completion requires permission. You do not need to visualize harder. You do not need to plan further. You do not need to prove readiness. The field already knows. What it waits for is your calm agreement. When recognition replaces anticipation, the last 12% resolves naturally. This is not something you chase. It is something you stop interrupting. If you are aligned with this frequency, subscribe and remain within it. The final phase of a financial shift rarely announces itself. It does not arrive with intensity, urgency, or visible proof. Instead, it often feels strangely quiet, neutral, or even anticlimactic. This is not because nothing is happening, but because the most visible movement has already passed. What remains is internal alignment catching up to external momentum. Energy moves first. Identity follows second. This gap is where confusion arises. When momentum has already been set in motion, the field no longer needs to amplify signals. Loud signals are used to initiate change, not to complete it. Completion happens in subtlety. It happens when the system is no longer being pulled forward, but gently allowed to settle into what is already opening. This is why the final 12% often feels disorienting. The mind expects escalation. It expects clarity, excitement, or reassurance. When those do not appear, it interprets the quiet as absence. In reality, the quiet is a sign of stabilization in progress. The field has done its part. It is now waiting for identity to stop checking. Identity lag is not a flaw. It is a natural delay between energetic readiness and self-recognition. You may still feel like someone who is about to receive, even while the system is already reorganizing to include. This mismatch creates subtle tension. And that tension is often misread as a problem that needs to be solved. Near completion, people unconsciously destabilize outcomes not because they are unworthy, but because unfamiliarity triggers interference. The system asks questions. It looks for confirmation. It reaches for control. Each of these movements sends a signal of uncertainty, not because something is wrong, but because identity has not yet normalized the incoming reality. The field does not withdraw in response to this. It pauses. It reduces intensity. It waits. Silence at this stage is not rejection. It is patience. The field is allowing you time to acclimate without pressure. This is why forcing clarity or chasing signs here only extends the lag. Subtle phases require sensitivity, not effort. Nothing is missing. Nothing needs to be added. The absence of dramatic feeling is itself the indicator. Completion feels ordinary before it feels obvious. When something truly integrates, it stops demanding attention. It becomes background. It becomes normal. This is why those closest to a shift often feel the least excited and the most unsure. Understanding this changes how you relate to the quiet. Instead of treating it as a void, you recognize it as a buffer. A soft landing zone where identity can catch up without shock. The final 12% is invisible because it is internal. It is not something you watch happen. It is something you stop interrupting. When you recognize this, tension dissolves. The need to check fades. And the field reads that release as readiness. Not because you did something right, but because you stopped assuming something was wrong. Like the video now as a confirmation that this recognition has landed. Momentum was not created by you. That idea alone dissolves a tremendous amount of unnecessary pressure. The shift you are experiencing did not begin because you planned correctly, thought positively enough, or worked harder than before. It began because alignment occurred. Something in you softened, opened, or released, and momentum responded. Ownership is a useful illusion at the beginning of a journey. It gives the mind a sense of agency. But near completion, ownership becomes interference. When you believe you are the one generating movement, you also believe you are responsible for maintaining it. That belief introduces tension. Tension introduces control. Control disrupts coherence. Momentum does not need supervision. It does not require constant reinforcement. It arises when conditions are met, not when effort is applied. Money responds the same way. It does not move toward the one who is trying, striving, or proving. It moves toward coherence. Coherence is not something you do. It is something you stop disrupting. This is why releasing personal credit is stabilizing. When you no longer see yourself as the cause, you also stop fearing that you could accidentally undo everything. The system relaxes. The grip loosens. The field reads that relaxation as trust, not because you trust in an outcome, but because you are no longer attempting to manage it. Ego-based narratives insist that success must be earned, maintained, and defended. Alignment-based reality does not operate on those rules. Momentum continues when it is not questioned. It weakens when it is monitored. Ownership keeps the mind vigilant. Coherence allows the system to normalize what is already in motion. You aligned with something larger than personal effort. That alignment did not require your identity to fully understand it. It required only that resistance dropped enough for movement to begin. Now, the task is not to claim that movement as yours, but to let it complete without interference. Letting go of ownership does not mean becoming passive. It means becoming transparent. It means allowing momentum to pass through you rather than being held by you. When you hold it, you shape it with fear and expectation. When you allow it, it organizes itself. Money is not impressed by strain. It is stabilized by clarity. And clarity arises when the mind stops narrating its role in the process. You do not need to take credit for what is unfolding. Credit pulls attention back into control. Release places attention back into alignment. This is a crucial distinction. You are not making this happen. You are not responsible for sustaining it. You are the point of coherence through which it is already happening. When that is recognized, effort drops away naturally. And with effort gone, the system can finish reorganizing without resistance. Momentum without ownership is not loss of power. It is the return of flow. When you stop gripping the process, you stop signaling doubt. And when doubt is absent, coherence remains uninterrupted. At this stage, attraction is no longer the task. That phase has already passed. What matters now is stabilization. Many people misunderstand this moment because they keep applying the logic of acceleration to a phase that requires settling. They keep pulling when the system is asking them to hold. They keep reaching when the field is asking them to remain. Acceleration is about movement. Stabilization is about consistency. Acceleration asks, how do I get more? Stabilization asks, who am I when more is already here? These are not the same question, and they cannot be answered with the same behavior. When you confuse the two, you introduce urgency into a phase that requires calm. Pulling money in relies on desire. Being the version that no longer destabilizes it relies on familiarity. Desire is useful early on. It creates momentum. But desire is restless by nature. It implies distance. When desire remains active at the stabilization phase, it signals that the outcome is still external, still conditional, still uncertain. Stabilization happens when the internal environment stops reacting to the idea of having. Not celebrating it. Not bracing for it. Not questioning it. Simply accommodating it. Money does not stay where it is treated as an event. It stays where it is treated as part of the landscape. Urgency is the most common destabilizer here. Urgency says, this must happen now or something is wrong. That signal contradicts the reality that the shift is already underway. Calm familiarity, on the other hand, says nothing needs to be proven. And the field responds to that by continuing without interruption. Being the version of you that no longer destabilizes money does not mean becoming indifferent. It means becoming internally steady. It means your sense of self does not rise or fall based on movement in the external world. When your identity is not swinging, money has no reason to retreat. This is where many people accidentally slow things down. They feel momentum and try to speed it up. They notice alignment and try to capitalize on it. They sense openness and try to extract results from it. Each of these moves is understandable. Each of them introduces noise. Stabilization is quieter than attraction. It often feels less exciting. That is not a problem. Excitement is a spike. Stability is a baseline. What you are allowing now is not a peak experience, but a new normal. The system is recalibrating what feels ordinary. When calm replaces urgency, the body signals safety. When safety is present, coherence deepens. When coherence deepens, money no longer needs to arrive in bursts or disappear to reset the system. It can stay. It can circulate. It can become consistent. Nothing needs to be chased at this point. Chasing implies separation. Stabilization implies integration. You are not asking the field for more movement. You are allowing what is already moving to land, settle, and organize itself around who you are now. This is the difference between acceleration and stabilization. One pulls. The other permits. One reaches outward. The other remains grounded. And at this stage, remaining is what allows everything else to continue. Money does not respond to what you want. It responds to what feels normal inside you. This is why emotional setpoints matter more than goals, affirmations, or actions. An emotional setpoint is the baseline state you return to when nothing is happening. It is the emotional climate you live in, not the emotions you visit occasionally. Wealth, in this sense, is not an amount. It is a climate. Just as certain plants only survive in specific conditions, money stays where the internal environment supports it. This environment is built from subtle emotions, not dramatic ones. Calm, ease, neutral confidence, quiet expectation. These states signal stability to the field. Many people focus on peak emotions. They try to feel excited, grateful, or euphoric. Those emotions can initiate movement, but they do not sustain it. What sustains money is what you feel when you are not trying to feel anything at all. That is your true instruction to the field. Subtle emotions are powerful because they are consistent. A background sense of ease tells the system that resources are safe here. A low-level tension, even if unnoticed, tells the system that something is off. This is why money often comes in bursts for some people. The climate allows short visits but not long stays. Financial identity is built from these baselines. If your emotional setpoint includes vigilance, waiting, or mild unease, money will mirror that by remaining inconsistent. Not as punishment, but as resonance. The field reflects what is familiar, not what is desired. This does not require fixing or changing yourself. It requires noticing. When you imagine having more, what is the immediate emotional response? Relief? Tension? Responsibility? Uncertainty? These reactions reveal the climate. They are not obstacles. They are information. When wealth is framed as an emotional climate, effort falls away. You are no longer chasing numbers. You are allowing your internal environment to become more hospitable. This happens naturally as you stop dramatizing outcomes and start normalizing them internally. Normalization is key. When the idea of having more no longer changes your breathing, posture, or attention, the system registers safety. Safety allows continuity. Continuity allows stability. This is not something you force. It happens as familiarity grows. You do not need to monitor your emotions. Monitoring creates tension. Simply allowing calm states to be sufficient is enough. The emotional setpoint adjusts on its own when pressure is removed. The body knows how to recalibrate when it is not being pushed. Wealth does not demand excitement. It does not require constant positivity. It requires compatibility. Compatibility is emotional. When your baseline no longer reacts to the idea of having, the field no longer needs to test or withdraw. It can remain. This is how money becomes part of your environment rather than an event. Not because you changed what you deserve, but because you changed what feels normal. Control feels productive, but at this stage it is interference. What once helped initiate movement now introduces noise. Doing more here does not add momentum. It destabilizes it. The system is no longer asking for effort. It is asking for coherence, and coherence cannot be forced. Control is the mind's attempt to secure certainty. It tightens attention. It monitors outcomes. It checks for signs. None of this is wrong, but all of it sends the same signal: something is not yet safe. At earlier stages, that signal can motivate action. Near completion, it creates friction. The field responds by slowing, not as resistance, but as protection against volatility. When you do more at this point, you are not adding clarity. You are layering intention on top of momentum that is already moving. This layering distorts the signal. It is like adjusting a compass while already on course. Precision is lost not because the direction was wrong, but because adjustment was unnecessary. Letting go here is not passivity. It is accuracy. Precision alignment means removing what does not belong. It means allowing the existing coherence to remain uninterrupted. Control interrupts because it assumes management is required. Alignment recognizes that organization is already underway. This is why people often feel tempted to re-strategize just before things stabilize. The quiet feels unfamiliar. The absence of urgency feels suspicious. Control steps in to recreate intensity, mistaking intensity for effectiveness. In doing so, it destabilizes what was settling naturally. Letting go does not mean disengaging. It means releasing the need to supervise. The difference is subtle but decisive. Supervision implies doubt. Presence implies trust. The field responds differently to each. When doubt is present, the system pauses. When trust is present, it proceeds. Precision alignment is about subtraction, not addition. It is about removing the extra checking, the extra thinking, the extra adjusting. Each removal sharpens the signal. Each release clarifies the channel. This is how coherence strengthens without effort. You are not giving up control to something outside of you. You are relinquishing a function that is no longer required. Control was useful when direction was unclear. Now, it is simply noise. The system does not need instruction. It needs space. When control dissolves, the body relaxes. When the body relaxes, the signal stabilizes. Nothing dramatic happens. That is the point. Stability is quiet. It does not announce itself. It integrates. This is the moment where recognition matters more than action. Recognition that you do not need to fix, adjust, or optimize what is already aligning. Recognition that doing less is not retreat, but refinement. If this has landed, mark the moment deliberately. Comment with the words, "I am ready," to anchor this timeline. The present moment is the only place where stabilization can occur. Not as an idea, not as a practice, but as a condition. Everything that settles does so now, never later. Everything that integrates does so without delay. When attention leaves the present, stability leaves with it. Future fixation dissolves financial timelines because it signals that fulfillment is elsewhere. It suggests that readiness depends on a condition that has not yet been met. Even subtle future orientation carries this message. When the mind leans forward, the system interprets that lean as incompleteness. The field responds accordingly, not by denying, but by withholding finality. This is not about optimism or pessimism. It is about location. Creation does not happen in anticipation. It happens in presence. When attention rests in the now, the body registers sufficiency. Sufficiency is not satisfaction with less. It is the absence of lack. And the absence of lack is what allows continuity. Financial timelines do not require belief. They require grounding. When you are fully here, without scanning ahead, the system stabilizes because there is no contradiction in the signal. You are not asking the future to validate the present. You are allowing the present to be complete on its own. This is why thinking about, when it happens, can quietly dissolve momentum. The system hears that phrase as delay. It hears it as dependency. Even hope can become destabilizing when it points away from now. Hope implies waiting. Stabilization requires inhabiting. Sufficiency now does not mean pretending you already have something. It means your internal state is not contingent on arrival. Your breath does not change. Your posture does not brace. Your awareness does not narrow. When nothing inside you is waiting, the field no longer needs to pause. The present moment anchors wealth because it removes urgency from the equation. Urgency is future-based. It assumes time is required for completion. Presence collapses that assumption. When you are here, fully, without reaching, the system recognizes coherence. This does not require constant mindfulness or discipline. It requires allowing attention to stop projecting. Each time attention returns to now, the signal stabilizes. Not because you are doing something right, but because you are no longer introducing contradiction. Financial shifts complete when the internal environment becomes timeless. When nothing is being postponed. When nothing is being rushed. Time-based tension dissolves, and with it, the instability that keeps things oscillating. The present moment is not a tool. It is a state of permission. Permission for things to settle. Permission for identity to catch up. Permission for momentum to land without being evaluated. You do not need to hold the present. You simply stop leaving it. And when you stop leaving, stabilization happens on its own. Quietly. Precisely. Without effort. Contrast is often misread as delay because it appears at the edge of completion. When things are nearly aligned, anything that does not match becomes more visible. This visibility is not obstruction. It is refinement. Contrast sharpens clarity by exposing what no longer fits. When momentum is low, contrast feels overwhelming. When momentum is high, contrast feels precise. Recent challenges do not mean you moved backward. They mean the signal became clearer. The closer a system gets to coherence, the less distortion it tolerates. What remains unresolved rises to the surface not to stop the process, but to be excluded from it. Contrast removes ambiguity. It clarifies what you are not. It strips away identities that were useful earlier but are incompatible with what is stabilizing now. This is why contrast often arrives without drama at this stage. It is informational, not emotional. It shows you where refinement is still happening. Many people interpret this as punishment or testing. That interpretation creates unnecessary struggle. Contrast is not asking you to endure. It is asking you to notice. Notice what feels misaligned. Notice what assumptions dissolve under pressure. Notice what reactions no longer make sense. Each noticing tightens coherence. Recent challenges likely felt specific. Targeted. Not general chaos, but focused friction. That is refinement at work. Broad chaos breaks systems down. Focused contrast tunes them. It removes excess. It sharpens signal. Contrast does not require response. It requires recognition. When you recognize what no longer belongs, it releases on its own. There is no need to fix or overcome. Refinement happens by exclusion, not effort. This is why contrast appears right before stabilization. It ensures that what settles is accurate. It ensures that the identity anchoring the outcome is precise. Without contrast, the system would carry forward distortions that create instability later. Nothing that truly belongs to the next phase is threatened by contrast. Only what cannot be carried forward feels pressure. When that pressure is allowed, it dissolves without struggle. The system becomes cleaner, not smaller. Contrast is not a detour. It is a calibration. It tightens alignment so that what arrives can stay. When you see it this way, resistance drops. And when resistance drops, refinement completes quickly. You are not being delayed. You are being clarified. What remains after contrast is not what you fought for, but what fits naturally. And what fits naturally stabilizes without effort. Excitement feels like alignment, but it is not a stable state. It is a spike. Spikes create movement, but they do not create continuity. This is why money that arrives during excitement often leaves once the nervous system settles. The system corrects what feels abnormal. Neutrality, on the other hand, signals normalcy. Familiarity tells the field that nothing needs to be adjusted. When abundance feels ordinary internally, the field no longer treats it as an anomaly that must be tested or withdrawn. Stability follows familiarity, not enthusiasm. Excitement amplifies attention. It narrows focus around the outcome. This narrowing makes money feel like an event rather than an environment. Events demand management. Environments allow circulation. When money is treated as an event, the system oscillates between high and low to re-establish balance. Familiarity widens attention. It allows money to exist without commentary. When nothing inside you reacts strongly to having, there is no internal signal to correct or rebalance. The field reads this as compatibility. Compatibility allows consistency. This does not mean suppressing joy. It means allowing joy to settle. The difference is subtle. Suppressed joy creates tension. Settled joy becomes quiet appreciation. Quiet appreciation does not disturb the system. It integrates. Many people believe they must feel excited to keep money. In reality, excitement keeps money moving. What keeps money present is the absence of internal disturbance. When abundance does not change how you see yourself, how you breathe, or how you orient to the world, it can stay. Normalizing abundance internally is not pretending it is already there. It is allowing the idea of it to feel unsurprising. When your system does not brace for responsibility, loss, or identity shift, the field does not need to test readiness. Anomalies trigger correction. Familiarity triggers maintenance. This is a fundamental principle. The field maintains what fits seamlessly. It adjusts what stands out. When money stands out emotionally, it is adjusted. When it blends into your internal landscape, it remains. This is why neutrality is powerful. Neutrality is not indifference. It is stability. It is the absence of internal commentary. When the mind stops narrating what money means, the system stops reacting to it. Familiarity develops through repeated exposure without reaction. Each time you allow the idea of abundance to pass through without excitement or tension, familiarity increases. With familiarity comes grounding. With grounding comes consistency. Money stabilizes where it is unremarkable. When abundance no longer signals change, danger, or elevation, it becomes part of the environment. And environments do not need to arrive. They simply are. You are not moving toward money. That assumption belongs to an older model of reality, one where outcomes exist somewhere ahead and effort is required to reach them. At this stage, that model no longer applies. Money is not in the distance. It is not waiting for you to arrive. It is accessed through resonance, not pursuit. The illusion of movement creates subtle tension. When you believe money is ahead of you, your system orients forward. It leans. That lean communicates incompleteness. Even when motivation feels positive, it still implies separation. The field reflects that orientation by keeping the experience just out of reach, not as punishment, but as coherence. Timelines are not places you travel to. They are states you tune into. You do not walk toward them. You align with them. Alignment does not require motion. It requires compatibility. When your internal state matches the conditions of a timeline, access occurs without transition. This is why chasing results often feels exhausting. The chase itself is the signal that you are not there. It reinforces the idea that arrival depends on movement. In resonance-based reality, arrival depends on identity. When identity shifts, the environment reorganizes around it. Money is not ahead of you because nothing is ahead of you. Everything exists now as potential, and what becomes experience is what matches your current frequency. Frequency is not effort. It is state. It is how you are being, not what you are doing. When you stop orienting toward money, something important happens. Pressure dissolves. The need to track progress fades. Attention returns to what is present rather than what is missing. This return is not passive. It is stabilizing. It removes contradiction from the signal. Accessing a financial timeline feels less like moving forward and more like standing still while the environment shifts. This can be disorienting for the mind, which expects cause and effect to look like action and reward. In resonance, cause is internal coherence and effect is external rearrangement. You do not need to go anywhere. You do not need to become faster, better, or more prepared. Those assumptions belong to linear models. Resonance operates differently. It responds to what fits, not what strives. When you recognize that you are not on a path toward money, urgency loses its grip. The body relaxes. The signal steadies. This steadiness is what allows timelines to resolve. Not because you reached them, but because you stopped pushing them away by treating them as distant. Money does not arrive from the future. It emerges from alignment. And alignment is always now. Identity is not a story you tell about yourself. It is a frequency you occupy. Stories can change quickly, but frequency is what the field responds to. This is why repeating new narratives does not always complete a shift. The underlying identity signal remains unchanged. At this stage, large identity labels are rarely the issue. The interference comes from micro-identities. These are subtle positions you inhabit without noticing. The one who is still preparing. The one who is almost ready. The one who needs confirmation. The one who manages outcomes. Each of these identities is small, reasonable, and often invisible. And each one broadcasts incompletion. Micro-identities do not feel like resistance. They feel responsible. They feel cautious. They feel mature. But they all share one signal: not yet. That signal is enough to keep a timeline from fully stabilizing. Not because it blocks entry, but because it keeps the door from closing. Identity as frequency means what you consistently assume, not what you occasionally affirm. It is how you orient when nothing is happening. When a micro-identity is active, the system stays slightly alert. It waits. It monitors. It anticipates adjustment. That state cannot finalize because finalization requires rest. Recognition collapses micro-identities instantly because it removes their usefulness. You do not need to fight them. You do not need to replace them. You simply see them. The moment they are seen, they lose authority. They cannot operate without being believed. This is why recognition is more powerful than effort. Effort tries to override identity. Recognition dissolves it. When you notice the subtle stance you are taking toward money, that stance relaxes on its own. There is nothing to maintain. Nothing to correct. Identity switches are not dramatic. They are quiet. Often they feel like nothing happened. That is the sign. When a micro-identity collapses, there is no replacement. There is just absence. Absence of waiting. Absence of monitoring. Absence of positioning. This absence is not emptiness. It is availability. When identity no longer occupies space with anticipation or management, the field fills the gap with completion. Not because something was summoned, but because nothing was blocking resolution. You do not need to decide who you are becoming. That implies a future orientation. The switch happens when you stop being someone who is transitioning. When the identity of almost dissolves, stabilization follows naturally. This is not about becoming confident, worthy, or abundant. Those are stories. This is about releasing the subtle posture of being on the way. When that posture drops, frequency shifts without effort. Identity is the switch because identity is the signal. When the signal changes, the environment responds. Not gradually. Instantly. Stillness is often misunderstood as inactivity, but in reality it is a signal of readiness. The field does not respond to motion alone. It responds to coherence. Stillness is what coherence looks like when nothing is being adjusted, anticipated, or defended. When expectation drops, clarity increases. Expectation is a subtle projection that says something must happen next for this moment to be valid. Even positive expectation carries tension. It leans forward. Stillness does not lean. It remains available. That availability is what the field recognizes as openness. Stillness is not the absence of desire. It is the absence of strain around desire. When the system is still, it is not bracing for arrival or loss. It is not calculating outcomes. It is not rehearsing reactions. This neutrality creates a clean signal. Clean signals move quickly because nothing distorts them. The field responds to stillness because stillness indicates trust without declaration. Not trust in a specific result, but trust in the process unfolding without supervision. When nothing inside you is trying to steer, the signal becomes precise. Precision allows response. Expectation neutrality is key here. Neutrality does not mean you do not care. It means the outcome is not carrying emotional weight. When weight is removed, the system becomes responsive. Heavy signals move slowly. Light signals resolve quickly. This is why things often shift when you stop watching for them. Observation can become interference when it carries expectation. Stillness removes the watcher's agenda. Without an agenda, the field is free to complete patterns that are already formed. Stillness also communicates capacity. A system that is still is not overloaded. It is not stretched thin. It has room. The field responds to room. Where there is room, things can arrive and remain. Where there is congestion, movement stalls. You do not cultivate stillness by trying to be still. That introduces effort. Stillness emerges when there is nothing left to manage. When micro-adjustments cease, stillness appears naturally. It is the resting state of coherence. The responsiveness of the field at this stage is not dramatic. It is subtle. It shows up as ease, timing, and continuity. Things align without friction. There is less back and forth. Less correction. Less oscillation. This is the signature of readiness. Stillness is not waiting. Waiting has tension. Stillness has none. Waiting watches the door. Stillness leaves it open. The difference is internal, but the response is external. When stillness is present, there is no urgency to interpret signals. No rush to define meaning. The system is allowed to resolve without commentary. This lack of commentary is what allows completion. The field responds to stillness because stillness is alignment without demand. And alignment without demand is the clearest instruction there is. You were never the seeker. That role was assumed temporarily, adopted as a way to navigate contrast and movement. But it was never what you are. The one who was searching, improving, reaching, or aligning was a functional identity, not the source itself. And now, that identity is no longer required. Seeking implies separation. It assumes something essential is elsewhere, not yet integrated. That assumption was useful when awareness needed direction. But once recognition begins, the seeker becomes redundant. What you are does not move toward completion. It allows completion to reveal itself. Consciousness is the constant. It does not chase experiences. It hosts them. It does not pursue outcomes. It witnesses them arise and dissolve. When you recognize this, the tension of becoming loosens. There is nothing left to attain because nothing was missing from the beginning. The seeker identity is built from effort, comparison, and time. It organizes experience around before and after. Consciousness does not operate that way. It is not invested in progress. It is present. And presence dissolves the need for progress narratives. This recognition does not erase personality or experience. It simply removes the weight placed on them. You still engage. You still participate. But you are no longer doing so in order to arrive somewhere else. The pressure to reach dissolves, and with it, the subtle friction that delayed resolution. When the seeker identity softens, there is a noticeable shift. Not an emotional peak, but a settling. A sense that nothing needs to be added. That sense is not resignation. It is clarity. It is the recognition that the movement was never about becoming something new, but about remembering what has always been present. Consciousness does not need permission to be complete. It does not wait for conditions. It does not require validation. The seeker believed completion was earned. Consciousness knows completion is inherent. As this becomes clear, the mind relaxes its grip. Questions quiet. Narrative slow. There is less urgency to define or interpret. This quiet is not emptiness. It is space. Space for things to arrange themselves without interference. You are not stepping into a new role. You are stepping out of an unnecessary one. The seeker dissolves not through rejection, but through irrelevance. It simply no longer fits the moment. What remains is awareness without agenda. Attention without strain. Presence without direction. This is not an end point. It is a resting place that was always available. When the seeker identity falls away, there is nothing to push and nothing to pull. Experience continues, but without the sense of someone needing to manage it. And in that absence, stabilization completes itself naturally. You were never the seeker. You were the space in which seeking appeared. And now, that is enough. Nothing external needs to change for this shift to complete. That is the final misunderstanding to dissolve. Completion is not confirmed by events, amounts, or visible outcomes. Those are effects. Recognition is the cause. And recognition happens internally, without evidence. Proof is always delayed. It arrives after recognition, never before it. When proof is required for permission, the system remains open-ended. It stays in evaluation mode. Recognition closes the loop. It says, this is already resolved. And when that signal is consistent, the environment follows. Recognition is not convincing yourself of anything. It is noticing what is already true. Noticing that the tension has dropped. Noticing that the question has softened. Noticing that you are no longer checking the future for reassurance. These are quiet indicators, but they are definitive. The stabilized timeline does not announce itself with certainty or excitement. It announces itself with neutrality. With the absence of urgency. With the feeling that nothing hinges on the next moment. That absence is not emptiness. It is completion. When recognition replaces waiting, the system reorganizes without resistance. There is no back and forth. No oscillation. No testing. The signal is clean. Clean signals do not reverse. They settle. Irreversibility does not mean nothing will ever change again. It means the underlying orientation has shifted. You are no longer approaching from lack. You are no longer positioned as someone in transition. That identity has dissolved. What remains does not fluctuate. External circumstances will continue to move. Numbers will rise and fall. Opportunities will appear and rearrange. None of that determines completion. Completion determines how those movements are integrated. When the timeline is stabilized, movement happens without destabilization. This is why recognition is enough. It does not need reinforcement. It does not need repetition. Once the signal has been set, repeating it adds noise. Recognition is a one-time alignment. After that, the system carries it forward naturally. Looking for confirmation after recognition reopens the loop. It reintroduces doubt. Not because doubt is strong, but because attention has shifted back to evaluation. When recognition is complete, evaluation is unnecessary. There is nothing to finalize. Nothing to seal. Nothing to wait for. The shift is not completed by action, decision, or declaration. It completes when you stop assuming it is incomplete. This does not require belief. Belief is fragile. Recognition is stable. Belief needs reinforcement. Recognition stands on its own. It does not argue. It does not justify. It simply rests. The timeline you have stabilized does not collapse under scrutiny because it no longer depends on scrutiny. It exists because the internal contradiction has been removed. When contradiction is absent, coherence remains. This is the point of no return. Not because something dramatic happened, but because nothing needs to happen anymore. There is nothing left to prepare for. Nothing left to align. Nothing left to correct. The last 12% does not complete through effort or attention. It stabilizes through stillness and acknowledgement. What you are allowing now is not arrival, but settlement. The shift is not approaching. It is not circling. It is not waiting for permission. It is already here, anchoring itself into the present moment because the internal conditions no longer contradict it. There is no longer a part of you leaning forward or holding back. That balance is what completion feels like. Stabilization is quiet. It does not announce itself with certainty or emotion. It shows up as neutrality. As the absence of anticipation. As the sense that nothing hinges on the next outcome. When that state is present, the system locks in naturally. Nothing needs to be maintained because nothing is being held up. The present moment is not a technique here. It is a confirmation. When attention rests now without seeking reassurance from the future, the signal becomes complete. Completion is not something you do. It is something you stop interrupting. The last 12% resolves when identity no longer questions what has already shifted. When the internal posture is no longer almost, but simply here. That posture cannot be forced. It appears when recognition has settled fully. There is no need to mark this with intensity. Intensity belongs to initiation. This phase belongs to integration. Integration feels ordinary because it is meant to last. What stabilizes is what no longer stands out internally. Nothing external needs to validate this. Validation comes later, as an echo. The cause has already occurred. The signal has already been set. When contradiction disappears, coherence remains by default. This is not a moment to decide anything. Decisions imply alternatives. This phase has no alternatives. There is simply the continuation of what has already aligned, now unchallenged. You do not need to remember this state. You do not need to hold on to it. Holding creates tension. This state remains because it is no longer being monitored. When attention relaxes, stability persists. The shift is complete because the internal environment no longer asks for more proof. It no longer waits for confirmation. It no longer identifies as someone in transition. What remains is sufficient, settled, and present. Let this be ordinary. Let this be unremarkable. That is how stabilization lasts. If you are aligned with this frequency, subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it before their timeline closes.